If we look at energy expenditure pre and during a workout, the goal of working out is to release sufficient ATP or energy and not to produce excess lactic acid. So what can we do nutritionally to modulate that? Because our goal is to drive muscle contraction. Our cells, through anaerobic and aerobic respiration, are able to actually produce ATP. I'm kind of reading from our document here. The aerobic energy system is much more efficient at producing ATP because it's using oxygen efficiently. This doesn't mean to do aerobic workouts, though. There's kind of an antagonistic relationship between anaerobic and aerobic workout versus anaerobic and aerobic metabolism. So the aerobic system is much more efficient at producing ATP, but takes much longer to produce ATP when the anaerobic cellular systems, the glycolytic and creatine phosphate, produce ATP very fast, but unfortunately one of its byproducts are lactic acid. And it's produced at higher concentrations, secondary to the lack of oxygen, which is the anaerobic at the cell level. This not only interferes with actually muscle contraction, but cellular respiration, thyroid hormone production, oxygen use at the cell level, glucose use at the cell level, basically leading to inflammation. Now, what we recommend for a lot of people is, of course, you have to look at your meals up to the workout, but a lot of the times we recommend people using water, orange juice, pulp-free orange juice, and gelatin, sipping on it pre and during a workout to help modulate the effects of stress, modulate the effects of adrenaline and cortisol, and even putting some salt in there to actually help down-regulate adrenaline. Because hypothyroid people typically compensate via being hyperadrenaline, and one of the reasons is because they're losing sodium so rapidly at the cell level. What does this do? It increases nutrient delivery to the muscle and spares muscle glycogen. It limits the immune system, basically suppression by blunting cortisol, because cortisol in excess is immunosuppressive. It sets a nutritional stage for faster recovery through regulating cell metabolism. The addition of the protein to a carbohydrate, which is your gelatin and your orange juice, promotes metabolism of undigested protein and lessens the demand for amino acid release from the muscles. And based off the research of, it's hard to pronounce this, Jenkins, during exercise, the addition of fructose to glucose increases the oxidation of carbohydrates by 50%. And this is actually what we want to do. By doing that, we're actually increasing cellular respiration. Our cells are using glucose to produce energy and not lactic acid. So that's something you can do working out. Of course, you have to look at the variables, but post-workout, you could do many things. Of course, it could be a meal. It could be a nice smoothie based on the ratios that work for you with proteins, carbs, and fats. Now, according to John Ivey, sugar, carbohydrates, the right types, are more effective than protein in preventing protein degradation in the muscle. And this kind of contradicts everything that's out there, because everyone says post-workout, you need to have as much protein as possible because you're trying to replenish what the body was breaking down. But the interesting thing is, of course, exercise is catabolic. You're going to break down muscle tissue. But with the right nutritional timing during the day, with that orange juice shake, etc., you're down-regulating that. So indirectly, what you're doing with your nutrition is decreasing your need for protein after working out because you're indirectly down-regulating the catabolic effects on muscle tissue by regulating your blood sugar, the use of oxygen, the use of sugar during the day with the right foods, the right ratios, the right frequency, as well as your pre and during workout meal. So you're down-regulating the catabolic effects of this. So you're indirectly affecting how much muscle tissue you're breaking down, which is going to decrease the amount of protein that you actually need. And all these people are overdosing on protein. What they don't realize it can actually create an insulin response in the body, which is going to perpetuate that vicious cycle. Now, yes, people increase their protein intake. They increase muscle size. I'm not doubting that. But at the same time, we have to look at what's going on at the cell level. We have to look at body temperature and pulse. And most of these people, at least the people that I work with, are running in the 96s and 97s. Now, most research shows that 30 to 45 minutes post-workout, your muscle machinery, in the presence of the right types and the right amount of carbohydrates and protein, can initiate repair of damaged muscle tissue and replenish glycogen stores. So right after exercise, your cells are very sensitive to insulin, which if paired with the right protein and carbohydrate ratio, as well as the right type of protein and carb, can be used to our anabolic advantage. So whatever you want to use post-workout, of course, I recommend a smoothie. Of course, more gelatin. You'll find down the line, once you've regulated your metabolism to a certain extent, you could probably eat a meal prior to working out, not have to sip the orange juice, and actually you can use a smoothie after working out. But to help modulate the effects of your day in the workout, initially some people need that shake during the working out, or just a small amount of orange juice and water and salt and gelatin. So using a post-workout meal that's more carb dominant than protein dominant. I'm not saying you don't need protein. You have to find the ratios that work for you. But typically my post-workout meal is actually more carb dominant than protein and fat dominant. What does this do? It prevents the depletion of muscle and liver glycogen, which can increase endurance. It will regulate blood sugar, which will regulate thyroid and cell metabolism, thus decreasing fatigue because we're downregulating we're upregulating, or we're increasing the conversion of T3. Once again, it will blunt the rise in cortisol, which is immunosuppressive, breaks down muscle tissue, demineralizes bone, and indirectly pushes you into this more metabolic state, because cortisol in excess is actually catabolic. Gelatin, this is why we recommend gelatin for many reasons, contains glycine and has been shown to facilitate the action of insulin in lowering and regulating blood sugar. This combination of proteins and carbs in the right ratio will increase the elimination of metabolic waste, such as lactic acid, which is what we want, which will decrease the metabolic burden on the liver. It will initiate the repair and regeneration of muscle proteins, reduce the damage to the immune system, as well the addition of fat, and I usually use a carrageenan-free cream. Fat is not our primary source of fuel, as most is stored in adipose tissue, and not readily available for fueling our muscles. In order for it to be used, it must be broken down into fatty acids, which is actually inflammatory. Anytime the body has to break something down, it uses more energy than it actually produces. This is why fat, as a primary source of fuel, is not efficient. In this process, the body will try to use fats when carbohydrates and sugars and proteins in the wrong ratios are not available. So that process can actually be catabolic. Now, of course, the supplements and things that you can use to downregulate the cachexia-like effects of exercise, of course, like niacinamide and calcium and salt and yada, yada, yada. But for me, it's about understanding what you can take in, what you need to take in, to indirectly modulate the effects of exercise, so you're not always suppressing your immune system, so you're not always suppressing T3 production, so you're not always suppressing the efficient use of oxygen at the cell level. So you're using nutrition to do that, as well as the right type of exercise that's more anaerobic, which supports the use of glucose and oxygen at the cell level, where the aerobic type of working out doesn't, because we consume too much too fast. And we release too much adrenaline and cortisol because it's long and sustained, and most of the time we're not meeting our metabolic needs when doing that. So hopefully you enjoyed this YouTube clip for today. I did. I'm out of here.